Okay, in the previous video, which was the do until or post test loop part 1, we discussed general properties of do until or post test loop. At that time we saw a flow chart which looks like this, where we said we are going to code this in JavaScript and show you a simple example in JavaScript of a do until or a post test loop. In JavaScript it's actually called a do while. So basically let's review the flowchart again. We have two variables here, count, because we need to add 6 numbers, so count will take care of that. It'll keep track of that. Accum is a variable that will store the sum of 6 numbers. Okay, so one property of do until loop or post test loop is that loop runs once. After that the loop condition is tested. So here inside the loop we read the data that user provides us, we add the data to this running accumulation, then we increase the counter by 1, and when we check the condition that counter is not equal to 6. So in the first iteration counter will be 1, counter not equal to 6 will be true. So we'll go back to this true path, we'll follow the true path again, and this will keep going until 6 numbers have been added, and accum is the sum of those. So 6 number will be added for count equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then count will become 6. At that time count not equal to 6 will be false. We'll exit the loop like this one and print the value of accumulation. Let's see our JavaScript code for this, which will map pretty closely with this flowchart. Here's the pseudocode, and it's almost identical to flowchart in this case. It's not that different. Alright. Okay, so it'll take me a second to find it. Should be here. This is my flash drive that has everything on it, and date modified post. Here it is. So we open it first with Adobe Dreamweaver to see the code, and of course you can open it with TextPad or Notepad, any of those things. I just downloaded Adobe on Macintosh here, on which I'm making the movie, so that's a little bit easier to see. So as you saw in the flowchart, we set the variable count to 0, must be initialized to 0 because notice it has to be increased later, and if something has to be increased it should start with a base value. And same thing, accumulation must be set to 0 because later on we're going to add something to it. And this data variable, you can initialize this, but it's not necessary because we will take user input into that, and this is needed so that we can build a string of whatever user entered and we can print them all at once later. Okay. Alright, here's the structure which we call do until in the pseudocode. In JavaScript is done as do while, do, the word do, left parentheses, right parentheses close, sorry it's not parentheses, it's curly brace, parentheses around, left curly brace, round curly brace. That's the code area inside the loop. and then the word while, this is the parenthesis, count not equal to 6, and this semicolon is required, as I mentioned in video number 1. So here we prompt user to enter the number to be summed up, and that number is stored in data, then data equal to 1.0 into data, so we can convert it from string back to the number. And we set input equal to input plus data plus a comma, so that we can build a string of all the numbers that got entered. Later on we want to print that too. And then this part was in the flowchart, accum equal to accum plus data. And since we got one data and we added that to this accumulation, we increased by our counter by 1. So in the first iteration, accumulation will be the first data that user entered, and in each iteration accumulation will increase or decrease depending upon whether user entered a positive number or a negative number. Finally, when count reaches 6, we would have gotten the 6 numbers, and count not equal to 6 becomes false, and we exit the loop. Then we write on the web page what numbers were entered. This input string has all the numbers, and we enter their sum. Okay, so we'll run it now. And I think the easier way I was able to do it earlier was if I just right click and open with. Okay, here we go. And here enter the number to be summed up. So first I'm just gonna do simple thing, numbers 1 to 6. So enter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and this is my last number, so I won't get this dialog anymore. And there you go. You enter the following numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the sum of numbers you entered is 21. And that would be true because 5 and 6 is 11, and rest of these are 10. So 10 plus 11 is 21. Okay. All right. So in the summary, this is how the post-test loop do until works. That you initialize the loop condition somewhere here, has to be initialized outside the loop, so prime reading doesn't change. Then the word do, this is the pseudocode where word until will be used. So read data, and here's the loop task, here's the loop condition that is tested here. And once this condition becomes false in case of do while and true in some cases, so that depends whether you're doing coding in Visual Basic or other languages. In JavaScript, this condition has to become false, and then loop exits, and we write the sum here. Okay, we'll stop here on this video, and in next video we'll do a more potent example of post-test loop, which in JavaScript is called do while, where we'll present a menu driven program. Post-test loops are very useful for menu driven program because once you do program through a menu, at least the menu has to be presented once. User can decide to exit after that. So that would be a very good example for this loop. Thank you. Bye.